Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. Those interviews are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to competitive teams, racers, rock crawlers, business owners, employees, media, and private park owners, men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have John Stewart. John works the four-wheel drive industry from pretty much the land use side. We will get into all of that with his history in four-wheel drive and off-road and find out more about John than he probably really wants everybody to know, but that's what we do here. So, John, thank you so much for spending some time and talking about yourself with us.
Well, Rich, thank you for the invite, and appreciate working to getting the message out. And yeah, I've listened to a couple of your podcasts, and it's good information.
Well, excellent. Okay. So let's start off with the easiest and basic question. Where were you born and raised?
I was born in Boise, Idaho, and spent up through high school and starting college in Idaho, joined the Navy, and basically left Idaho almost over 50 years ago, and really haven't lived there since. But
I spent a couple of years in Idaho.
Yeah, well, like I said, I was born in Boise. Still have a brother over in Bruno and a few other cousins in the Boise area. And I graduated in high school out of Pocatello. I lived all over the state. We moved around quite a bit as a kid, and I got to see a lot of the state. It's a great area. In fact, I got out into the deserts and the mountains and that there before four-wheel drive was popular.
All right. So let's talk about those early years. Boise was a lot smaller if you left there about 50 years ago.
Yes, it was. It's the area around Boise. It's back through there. What was it? Last fall. And I could not believe the amount of growth in the region. It's a far cry from what it was when I was a kid growing up in that area. And we'd go up to Stanley Basin. We would have a run of the areas of places, and you go that then is on Smiley Creek and some other place up in the headwaters of Salmon River. And you go up there now, and they're closed off, either wilderness areas or protected areas, no fishing, no getting near the streams. It's sad to see the changes that have occurred.
Yeah, and that part of the state is, I believe, the only part that votes blue in that Ada County in the whole state. I lived in Blackfoot for a couple of years before Shelley and I decided to take We Rock full time on the road and do dirt ride and all that kind of stuff. And it was a nice place. The winters were way too cold for me. When I was a kid, cold winters didn't matter. But as I get older, cold winters matter.
Oh, I hear you, and I feel every bit of the cold temperatures as they come rolling around. And where I live now, you can't get down into teens. And I said, that's cold enough for me.
Right. And the teens is still a lot better than what Idaho can get.
Yeah, I remember days, some winters that it'll be going 30 below, and it'd get up to zero, and we'd be out running around in short sleeves saying, "Hey, it's a bright sunny day. The sun's out. It's a great day."
Yep. So growing up back then, that whole area was pretty rural unless you were like downtown. What
Right.
did you was school close enough for you to walk or ride a bike, or did you have to bus, or what was the whole thing? Or were you guys riding horses?
No, we weren't into horses. That was we mostly lived pretty much in the suburbs, but up till up until high school, I was always within walking distance of school. And once I hit high school, then we were living just under 2 miles from the high school, and their distance radius for the bus service, I believe, was about a mile and a half. So, in high school, it started being the bus rides to and from school.
Okay. And school was a lot different for me back in, I graduated high school in 76, and it's a lot different now than it was then. And you preceded me by a couple of years. So what was school like? What kind of classes was it just core or?
Well, you had your core classes that you had to take. You had a certain number of credits of science plus English and math that everybody had to take. Then you would get one or two electives classes per year, maybe it was three. But anyway, you had the core classes, the basic reading, writing, arithmetic type thing, and the science courses were required. Biology, chemistry. Let's see. Yeah, that was my first introduction into physics. In a senior, I had a physics class. But the standard go rounds of algebra, a couple of years of algebra, the geometry, and then advanced math classes, and all of your standard English classes, and they had other electives I recall were some business, home economics. Oh God, that was so long ago I can barely remember what was going on there.
I get it. Did you have
Yeah,
any kind of shop classes?
oh yeah, we had shop. We had, in fact, I got into architectural mechanical drawing as a sophomore in high school, and we had a woodworking shop classes, and there was also the auto shop classes, and FFA, Future Farmers of America, had a series of classes for those that wanted to get into more of the agricultural and shop type basis for the mechanics.
Okay. And you said you went from high school. You went in. Go ahead.
Yeah, I went from high school, stepped out of high school, and right on into college up at Idaho State University for about a year and a half. And I got college and I did not agree because I didn't have to study to maintain my high average in high school and graduated, with an A student. But college is a lot different environment, and there you have to put forth an effort to it, and I just wasn't ready. I got tired of the school and the deal, and dropped out of college and joined the Navy and visited the world.
In the Navy, okay. What did you do in the Navy?
Throughout high school, I picked up a knack for an interest in electronics,
Okay.
and I ended up when I joined the Navy, went through all the aptitude tests, and uh, they got me into an electronics-based setup, and I was actually my grading or rating was an electronics warfare technician. By the time I got out of the Navy, spent 9 years in it, but I was always involved in the electronics and technical aspects of what was going on. My career duties, I spent almost 5 years on ships homeported out of Yokosuka, Japan. So I saw a lot of things from up just northern tips of the islands of Japan all the way down south of the equator.
Wow.
So,
Okay. And what was life like on a ship?
life on a ship, man, that is something that you're on a strict regime of going from duty watch or station watches, and then during the daytime, there's always uh, standard working details. You're either painting or repairing or something going on. You're never busy, and the chow lines are there. You're up. You're fed well. And I was on the old tin can, so life was a lot different for them, at that time, because you're crowded into bunks. Your berthing spaces, you didn't have a lot of room. Um, Everything, the ships made their own fire, own water through evaporating systems to make their own fresh water. And there were many times where you would be limited on the amount of water times that you could shower, because of problems with the evaporators or inability to really produce enough water to keep everything going. But we learned how to adapt, and everybody had a certain amount of camaraderie that we always had a good time. Met a lot of good people on the ships, and a lot of good memories from that time.
Okay. And then you said you spent 9 years in the military or in the Navy, which is, of course, the military. That was dumb.
Yeah.
So what did you do after that time?
Well, it's my 9 years in the Navy. I was finishing up, shore duty in San Diego, and I got tabbed to work on a electronics warfare training program and developing training aids for rate training.
Okay.
Well, about time I was ready to reenlist, so they kept pushing me to reenlist and say, "Yeah, you passed the chief's test. You'll be a chief. You'll be in a great spot." And they said, "But you've got to go back overseas." And I said, "No, no way." Married with 2 kids, and there was no way I was going to leave San Diego. And they wouldn't even let me stay in San Diego. So I got out, and I got out of the Navy. And about 2 months later, I was back working for the Navy, doing what I did when I was in the Navy.
Probably at a higher rate.
A little bit more pay.
Yeah.
And I spent the next several years working in with the training aids program with a Naval Education and Training Support Center out of San Diego, and left that place and moved over to because by then I had advanced to the point I was the IT department manager for that small Navy activity. Then I had a chance to move over to get a pay raise and move over to a different activity where I became an IT security manager for a larger Navy activity in San Diego.
Okay.
So I've been involved in the computers and IT security. Let's see, 30, 40, almost 40 years now.
Wow. Okay. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So have you retired from regular work, or consulting work, or are you?
Yes, I have retired from any kind of paid consulting work. I mean, you graduated 76. I graduated 10 years before you.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
I'm here at the point where I had a chance for a lifestyle change, and the way things were going in California with my consulting with the California Four-Wheel Drive Association and California's laws about uh,
Everything.
everything, and it became a question as whether they could afford to have consultants and be forced to bring them on as employees. Well, I knew they could not afford to bring on any employees, with all the attendant cost for an employee.
Right.
And that all happened at a time when my current wife and we had a chance to invest in some land here in Middle Tennessee for her son and daughter-in-law. And they're in the process now of building a wedding venue in Tennessee.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Oh.
And what you say, Middle Tennessee, like Crossville,
Middle
or?
Tennessee, no, about 50, 60 miles south of Nashville.
Okay. Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, we ended up with 28, almost 29 acres of land, raw land out here. There was not a road into the place when we started. Now we've got almost 2 miles of road. Around here, we just let's see. Wife and I have a house on the property. Stepson and daughter-in-law have a house here, and then the nice big shop. And the wedding venue is the foundation's laid for it, and we're trying to get the funding together and everything together to begin a concrete pour for the slab and get the building erected.
Excellent. That's cool. I like that. So let's talk about those years that I guess was you were still doing the computer consulting and all that, but you got involved in off-road. Did that happen before the military going into the Navy, or did that happen while you were in San Diego?
Well, I always developed a love for the hunting and fishing and camping when I was a kid growing up in Idaho,
Right.
and I been getting back to Idaho on a periodic basis over the years, and keep seeing these things where wilderness signs keep popping up, and wilderness study areas, and all this was happening, and places were being closed off. Places where I used to go hunting and fishing as a kid were now being closed off. So then I came a time in the late '80s when started looking around and seeing more in California where the Desert Protection Act was coming up and in play, and I started saying, "Hey, wait a minute! You close these areas off, and we got a lot of problems. There's no place to go." And so I started getting involved in the late '80s into what was going on and learning a lot about it, and seeing that as off-roaders and with the recreation community in general, whether you're an off-roader or mountain bike or fishermen or hunters, we're all stuck at a point where places were just being closed off, and continuing those activities was becoming very difficult. So, like I said, I got involved in that and soon joined Cal Four Wheel and the Blue Ribbon Coalition, some other places that just to help support these organizations. And all this was time when I was still working for a living. And finally, we came to a point where I was able to retire from a daytime job and took on land use issues on a full-time basis. And that's when I spent 17 and a half, a little over 17 years representing Cal Four Wheel and four-wheel drive interests in California. So.
And a lot of that in meetings, in courtrooms, things like that.
Spent a few hours in courtroom sessions listening to what was going on and but many hours in meetings, group meetings, or small meetings with the Bureau of Land Management or the Forest Service or the Fish and Wildlife Service, and in meetings anywhere, all throughout California, but most of us from Sacramento South, and a number of times up into Las Vegas, several times over into Phoenix, Flagstaff area, and even over into Albuquerque and Santa Fe, New Mexico on a couple of times, and even as far as El Paso, Texas, all with issues dealing with California OHV and the water issues that are prevalent within the state. So,
And how did you find the agencies? Were they receptive to motorized recreation, or I should say anything besides pedestrian recreation, meaning bicycles, horses, that kind of stuff? What were they? How receptive were they?
when I first started in that, I found the agencies were not very receptive because, in a lot of ways, they did not understand what was going on. There were a few exceptions, like within the Sierra National Forest. There's a couple of groups and the clubs from Cal Four Wheel and that had built a lot of good personal relationships with the Forest Service up in that area, and they had a lot of good things going and still have a lot of good things going, even with a lot of the problems that management problems cropped up in that area in recent years. And this was back in the time when the Rubicon Trail, the crown jewel of everything, was being looked at with a lot of scrutiny, and there was some bad feelings there with some of the initial the Forest Service and recreationist interaction.
Yeah,
But
you're not telling me anything new.
yeah, I remember being on a lot of conversations with a number of people, and they finally got their act together. They've got the Rubicon Trail Foundation and the Friends of Rubicon spun up and going, and they've got the county behind them and backing them. So they've got some good, they have developed some good working relationships. But it's one of those things where, 15, 20 years ago, those good relationships and those interactions were not there. And that's one thing I've always encouraged the local groups to do is sit down with the local ranger or LEO or whoever is managing your lands in the areas where you are interested in, and see what their concerns are, and let them know and explain what you want to do and how you can help them. Buy them a cup of coffee, buy them a beer. Get to know them.
Right. I always thought that the best way to influence the decisions or the mindset of those federal employees was through the local county, city business leaders, the representatives, congressmen, county officials, whatever, and try to get them to understand what the financial impact was, so that those people had more of a say with the federal employees.
Yes, and that is one of the, and I agree wholeheartedly with what you're saying, because and one of the things where we made a lot of inroads in the Inyo National Forest with some of their management points was under travel management. When Inyo released their original plan, they had an estimated 5,000 miles of travel routes on the Inyo National Forest. With their plan, they were only going to keep and maintain less than 300 miles of routes.
Jesus.
By the time myself and several other people in the Inyo area, and this was businesses, we got together in the final travel management plan that they submitted and that we everybody agreed on it. And this was the Sierra Club, the Friends of the Inyo, who was affiliated with the Center for Biological Diversity. We came up with about 2,700 miles of routes that would be open, with an additional almost a little over 1,000 miles of routes that would be kind of held in reserve and essentially looked at for their impact, and with the opportunity to open them up with some road maintenance or trail maintenance assistance over the coming years.
Okay.
So this was a point where it was getting the local businesses in there to really stress what the economic impact would be if they closed this down to the motorized recreation community. There are a lot of people that they really wanted to have the hikers and the non-impact sports in there, but we showed them that hey, you get a hiker come in there with with $20 in their pocket and a backpack, and they'll leave with a empty backpack and still have their $20 in by the time they leave the area.
Correct. They
But
don't spend any money.
your four-wheel drive, and your hunters and the fishermen, they will be there for some time. They're going to buy gas. They're going to buy fuel. They're going to spend the money in the area, and that's where, because a lot of those local businesses help win the support from the Forest Service to keep a lot of those roads open. And so
Yeah, I know that was getting the county involved, El Dorado County involved with the Rubicon was huge. When they to have that backing.
right.
One of the things that always drove me nuts, and why I kind of walked away from all of that, was I thought that we needed to fight the way we were being fought. And that was always, real aggressive with threats of lawsuits. Most of the time, the government was like, okay, we don't want to be sued by the Center of, the Center of Biological Diversity or the Sierra Club or any of these other, green groups. It was more like, okay, we'll just bend to them so that we don't get sued. And then the off-roaders and the, all of us, anybody else that had something besides your foot, pedestrian, I call it, took it in the shorts. We had to give, we ended up giving it up.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a fair assessment, but it just always seemed like there was a lot of, well, okay, if you give us this, we'll go ahead and not fight you over that kind of thing. And
yeah, it's always been a problem, and I've always felt that lawsuits are a last resort, and if you end up in the lawsuit, you're in a crapshoot, and the House is controlling the loaded dice.
right.
It's not a good position to be in. There's no quick answer, and lawsuits typically will take 3 to 4 to 5 years to work them out. Good example of that is look at snowmobile access to Yellowstone Park. That snowmobile access was beginning and ended up in lawsuits in the mid 1990s, and it was almost 15. It was over 15 years before a final decision came out of the courts, which basically opened up in a limited access snowmobiling into Yellowstone Park. So, lawsuits are not the answer. They're sometimes necessary. And the place that we really need to build up is in the legislative side with the federal lawmakers when you're dealing with the terminology and with the laws that govern the federal grounds and the federal lands, and also work very closely with the state, where you have state lands that have where the state can come up and rule and make their own decisions. So it's a it's something where it all boils down to the administrative executive branches of the government that implement poorly worded laws, and this is where your good relationship with the Forest Service land managers, BLM, and Fish and Wildlife, you can sometimes win a lot of good points on there if you are friends with the people on the ground that have to interpret the laws.
Right. That makes sense. And
Yeah.
and coming from the enthusiast side, and I'll say, on the extreme side of that, it always felt like we didn't have a chance, you might say. And I don't know if that's a fair assessment, but it always just seemed like there was never, and I don't know if it was a communication thing, or that maybe some of us that were, more on the extreme side just quit paying attention, is why we didn't feel like we were being heard or whatever. But,
Well, and a little bit of history tossed in here.
Okay.
Is back in the 1920s, there was a group that first thought about the idea of protecting public lands, and that group is now known as the Wilderness Society. The Wilderness Society was the driving force to create the Wilderness Act, which was not signed into law until 1964.
Right.
And then it took several years for the Wilderness Act to really be implemented or determined what it really means and how it's going to be enacted on the ground. By the time this happens, you have the Wilderness Society, the Sierra Club, and all these other kinds of, extreme conservationist organizations spinning up and moving forward and organizing everything they had and everything they want to, protect the land, protect the resources. But here you had the recreationists, the enthusiasts, the common person on the ground was getting shut out right and left with no effort behind organization. And it wasn't until Ed Waldheim with the California Off-Road Vehicle Association and Ed Dunkley and some others with the California Four-Wheel Drive Association, some of these other groups started spinning up and started doing some organizing, that we started to get a small group of people in tune to what was going on. And it's been a tough fight ever since, just to try and play catch up. And that's what we've been doing, just playing catch up. And how do you win when you're playing catch up and you're not well funded? You don't have the glitzy advertising or the big support that the conservationists have come up with. And if you really look at a lot of the wilderness acts and these bills that are put forward that hammer the hell out of the recreational enthusiasts, they're highly supported by East Coast representatives or congressional people that probably have never seen or been to the areas that they're voting to close off.
Yeah, and most of their funding is coming from
absolutely
from the large populated, densely populated area, centers,
yeah,
large cities, and that have no idea, have never been out there, never fished, never hunted, never seen a redwood tree, never been out in the desert.
Yeah, and it's an easy sell in downtown. It's an easy sell in downtown New York City to get somebody to donate to save these magnificent, beautiful trees that they're showing glowing pictures of, when all they see is just dirty buildings and trashy streets.
Yeah, and they don't realize that what the pictures that they're being showed of devastation by off-roaders or motorcyclists or the bicyclists and mountain bikers or even the equestrian groups. They don't understand that that's such a small
Yeah.
area.
Yeah. And a lot of those derogatory pictures have been proven to be doctored pictures that are in that. So it's very, selectively edited.
Yeah, it's that whole advertising mentality, all being run by, I think it's just lawyer firms that just found a cash cow.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And it's so like I said, it's been a fight in order to get people organized and get the businesses to realize that yeah, Tony, you make some great parts, but if you don't have a place, or people don't have a place to buy and use your parts, they're soon fall out of favor of spending this little extra pocket money they have for these high cost parts. And so, yeah, Tony Pellegrino and Chinright have been great supporters. A lot of others, Raceline Wheels, and somebody said, terrific supporters. Metal Cloak have been a big help over the years in order, to help fund and help get the organization going and get the word out. So,
Yeah, because if people don't use their vehicles on the weekends to get out, they're not going to be spending the parts to either fix them or to build them up the way they want to. So all that aftermarket, has a chance of diminished returns, you might say.
it has diminishing returns, but I recall, I don't recall the gentleman's name, but he was with Daystar, and we had in a conversation in a meeting one day. He flat out stated that about less than 25% of Daystar's products ever see off-road use. Most of them are the dress products that go on the show and shine vehicles and the daily drivers that people just want to look good.
Yeah, I guess that's the case, but that's yeah, I don't know. I see more and more enthusiasts getting into once they get that vehicle dressed up, then they start looking at where to go.
Yes, and one thing, like I said, living in Southern California and being heavily involved in the off-road community out of San Diego area, I would see the vehicles being driven, and also see them out at the Tierra del Sol Desert Safari and other places out in the desert throughout there. And you can see, well, a lot of these vehicles have been taken care of, and there's a lot of work, a lot of money going into them. But a lot of times you really didn't see that many of them being driven around town. When I get out here to Middle Tennessee and throughout this area here, and you will see I see a lot of Jeeps on the roads on a regular basis, and a lot of them have they're running 35s, 37-inch tires, nice lift kits, really good looking vehicles. And I started looking around and said, well, okay, what kind of clubs are out here? What's going on? And I find there are a number of clubs out here, and some big clubs, and there are quite a few four-wheeling areas that people go to. And I've been working or conversations with some people that are building up an OHV area with Tennessee funding, just about 40 miles south of me here in Tennessee. So it's something that there are people that are building the rigs, they're buying the bling, they're putting them on. But for everyone you see, they're not all going out and being used like they should be. So
Right, and I truly think the farther east you go from say California, and you start moving east, especially once you get into the Rockies or after the Rockies, where you don't have the public lands and
Yeah.
everything becomes private, that you have a lot less enthusiasts that are actually using their vehicles, on more of the extreme side. But you also
Right.
have less that understand what we're losing in the West.
And that's the difficult part, is to get them to understand what we are losing and what we stand to lose. And yes, you may have Windrock, you may have Land Between the Lakes, or some of these other places that
Harland, Kentucky.
yeah, you may have those areas, but those are all points that are at risk of being shut down any time, because some of that is reclaimed mining land, or it is potential future mining operations in there. It's not really public land. It is land that is being set aside for a recreation right now, because it's either it's not private land, so yeah, it's open, but
Yeah,
by private
it's
land,
regulated.
it's not private land under individual private ownerships. It's under private land because there's somewhat of a corporate ownership, and that corporate ownership is deemed as, well, it's okay for us to manage it this way for the time being, in order to use the land, make a profit, but being able to expand it and really go full bore on a lot of things, and to combine fishing and hunting opportunities with four-wheel drive opportunities is those are limited.
Right. No, I agree.
Now, if you want boating, boy, there's boats all over the place.
Yeah, especially because of the Tennessee.
The Tennessee
Yeah,
Valley Authority, with the size of lakes and number of lakes they have around here. And yeah, I've been out to a couple of TVA places and lakes here, and for the weekends, and it's a lot of fun on the water. But you're seeing the same thing there that the four wheelers have. There's a lot of restrictions on the type of boats that can be run and where you can run them, all the no wake zones being set up. So yeah, it's
right.
challenges all over.
Yes, it is, and I think it boils down to. Well, I think it boils down to education. It's the people getting. I don't know, getting the people that aren't enthusiasts or owners, or even the ones that are, but aren't necessarily enthusiasts, to understand that what they're doing, going to a private park in Pennsylvania, or somebody that has a land lease out there, or anywhere else where there's not real public lands like out west, that as we lose more and more and more of this, that the opportunities for the future, not only for us that are of age doing it now, but for our kids or grandkids or whatever, is going to become more and more limited, without their involvement.
Right, and it's yeah, and the economy and the strength of the economy has a lot to do with it, with what it is. And when you look at an enthusiast, well, what is an enthusiast? Because is it the guy that that just goes out once or twice a month, or is it the one that goes out every other day? It's tough to really make that point. And when when you have a family and kids, and you've got two incomes trying to house the put pay for the housing, put food on the table, there's limited time to really do much other than take care of the daily needs. So the education is a big part of it, and being able to broach that topic of what people stand to lose with people that are so mindset with trying to carry on daily life and get out on a weekend. That's kind of tough to do because they don't understand what's there. They just want to go out, want to have that availability, but they really don't understand the implications that they do with decisions they make and what they buy, who they vote for, how it's going to impact their opportunities. So, yeah, education on the political side and education on what their actions are going to impact the environment or create a situation where people, show a negative light. So,
Right. And God, it's such a hard it's such a hard concept for so many to grasp if they've not experienced that that opportunity to be out on public lands
yeah,
and be able to just to drive. And in California, all your public lands except for pretty much Johnson Valley or is so highly regulated that you can go down this dirt road, but you better have GPS that shows that this area that you're bordering is wilderness, and you can't go down the other dirt road.
yeah.
And luckily Nevada is more wide open, but the rest of the states are all getting throttled down, and it's a shame. It really is.
Yeah, and that's where we, see, I'm still highly involved with the Blue Ribbon Coalition
Right.
and with programs that they're doing. And right now we're looking at Utah and specifically in central Utah from Moab west over to the Canyonlands area, Bryce Canyon, Zion, and all that big desert area out there. The BLM now wants to do a massive closures out there, just because they don't want to fight a lawsuit from the Utah Wilderness. It's what? Yeah, the SUA, Southern Utah Wilderness Alliance. And we're slowly making inroads to show that, hey, BLM, these roads that you say are not there, actually, they do exist on the ground. See, these maps are here. And oh, by the way, you can drive out here. Well, maybe there's been a little bit of sand blown over, but you can see the tracks into it. And 100 yards up there, you can see the tracks coming out of that. So the roads are there, and we're slowly making some progress there. But yeah, Arizona, similar type things. The Forest Service wants to close a lot up in the Tono with the Mogollon Rim area, and that there were tough fights there, and even down in southern area around Tucson, a lot of problems there. Currently in discussions with the National Park Service, where they want to begin limiting the number of people going into Toro Weep Overlook over the Grand Canyon. And the Forest Service or the Park Service wants to say, oh, well, our management plan lets us have only 20 people a day. And this includes the, filling up which I think there's 10 dispersed camping sites, your primitive camping area there. So you have 10 there, then you can only have 10 other people, but so you're now putting a major impact because they claim there's 30 to 40 vehicles a day into that area.
Interesting.
So yeah, it's things like this where the agencies they're still not completely receptive to it. For the agencies, it's easier for them to close roads to manage it than it is to have roads open where they might have to have somebody go out and physically drive a road in order to see if anybody is stranded or in trouble in these areas. So,
yeah, I had a BLM recreational planner that I dealt with out of the Carson City office. She has been retired for many years now, so I can talk about her. I won't say her name, but she told me we were sitting out there. I was running Valley Off-Road Racing Association at the time, and also had opened up Moon Rocks for competitions. And so, I had permits going all over, that area, and probably like 7 active permits going for races and rock crawls. And she goes, well, it's a lot harder and a lot more work for us to say no than it is to say yes. And I looked at her, and I was like speechless. My jaw dropped, and I was like, okay, explain to me how that works. If I put in an application for a permit and you say, oh, don't even bother, I'm going to tell you no. So don't even bother putting that application in for a new race course within the same area that I've already got permitted, or this rock crawling area. You're going to have to do all this stuff to make it happen. Don't even bother. How is that no so much more difficult than saying yes? You guys charge me cost recovery back then to do everything. And how is that, I didn't understand the concept that she was trying to put forward. Of course, she couldn't give me a valid argument except to say that, oh yeah, it costs, it's a lot harder for us to say no.
Yeah. Yeah, you bring up the topic of permits, and that's always been a problem with that I've faced and argued countless times with with BLM in Southern California, and I've been on the winning side of a lot of the arguments. And I know first couple of years that Dave Cole with his big adventure on getting permits for his rock crawling there.
For King of the Hammers, yep.
He had the King of the Hammers, boy. He almost didn't get it one year. And I know I got in and argued and helped him, and they BLM granted the permit. And I had somebody come back, catch me, somebody from BLM catch me later, and they said, "Why do you want them to have that permit?" I said, "Why not? I mean, you've got an opportunity to do your cost recovery to help build this, and they bring people in that, and it's a good venue for them to put everybody in under control." So, and Dave was a consummate salesman, and he built that event up with good staff to support him, and over the years it has thrived, and BLM has realized it's not really a problem to them now. It actually helps them and helps the image.
Yeah, it's a cash cow for them too.
Right.
That's one of the things with the cost recovery. People listening to this, if you don't know what cost recovery is, it's when you get a permit with Bureau of Land Management, your permit is, say it's $250 for a standard permit to do to do something like an event. If your event permitting, the time that they spend on it doesn't go over 50 hours.
Right.
At the 50-hour mark, as soon as it hit 50 hours, then you have to start paying additionally for every hour from 0 up to whatever it is that they put into it. Now, you have no way to know how much they actually spend or how much time they spend on it, or what they're actually charging you for cost recovery. And what I mean by that is, like, what their law enforcement what they're going to charge you for law enforcement to be at your event. If they've deemed it, you have to have law enforcement. Now, you can bring in sheriffs and pay the sheriffs to be in there and go, okay, so then we don't need your BLM because we have sheriffs. And they're like, oh, no. You still are going to have this many people. You're going to have this many Bureau of Land Management law enforcement officers as well.
Yep. And
if we have to bring them from out of the district, then you have to pay for their travel, their per diem, their stay, for every single hour that they put
Right.
into that event. And you have no way to control those hours.
Yeah.
And I mean, one time out of the Tucson office, we were trying to get a permit for a rock crawling competition that was actually outside of Apache Junction in the Florence area, but that's controlled by the Florence or the Tucson office. And they said, well, you're going to have an owl study. And I'm like, all right, tell me about this owl study. And they said, okay, well, it's what we do is we hire this company that goes out and they call and then count owls. I'm like, so when was the last time an owl was seen in this area? Well, we've never seen any owls in the area, but it's prime habitat if the owls decide to move in. And I'm like, so right now there's not been any owls. When was the last time you guys looked? Oh, well, we look periodically. They wouldn't give me an exact time. And I said, so what you're going to do is you're going to charge me to pay somebody to go out there for whatever period of time that you guys deem is the right amount of time and call owls into an area where there's no owls existing now. And if an owl comes into that area, then I don't get a permit. Yeah, that's right. And I'm like, how in the hell does that make any sense?
Yeah, I hear you. I've heard that story. That happened in other places. And in fact, I can relate a story where San Diego four-wheelers do their Superstition Mountain Run down in the Utah Desert in Southern California.
Right.
It's a neat area. And one year, for their permit, BLM was saying, oh, well, we have to have an archaeological study, an archaeological survey of the area. And, okay, you have a staff archaeologist, get her out there and take a look at the area. I said, well, no, our staff archaeologist is booked up, and we just don't have time. You'll have to contract somebody. I said, what? Why us? And this is us working with Richard Jackson with San Diego Four Wheelers at the time, and we were in a meeting with the BLM manager out of the central office, and he was telling me this. And I looked at him and said, Tom, what you talking about is extortion. And I said, you want us to actually find some money to hire somebody to do your job? And he kind of sheepishly looked at me and said, well, yeah, but I said, all right, I'll tell you what, we'll do that. So within a month, Richard and I had the contacts together. We had funding for an archaeological survey to be done, and it was with a consultant that BLM certified and BLM approved. And BLM, who was saying, oh, well, we don't have the money to pay for it. Guess what? They paid for it anyway. But this is where they paid for it because they were funding the Gateway Development Agent grouping, which was trying to, build the businesses and the business aspects and the four-wheel drive and the sand buggy aspects within the Glamis Dunes and all this. So it was brought into the county, and this Gateway Development, that they're the ones that used the BLM money to fund it. So they got their permit, and they've had it every year since.
Wow.
And the local managers in the different offices, for a while, Cal Four Wheel had a lot of problems out of the Ridgecrest field office getting their permit done for an event there. And finally, that manager retired. The next guy that came in, we finally got a permit through 1 year and came back the next year. And I got ready to go in and have a sit-down meeting with him. And he said, oh, why are you coming? It's pointless for you to come in here every year and do this. I said, yeah. I said, how about would you do this now? Well, it'll be good for 5 years. Sold. So I got them a 5-year permit for that event. Then all of a sudden, other places throughout the area began to, Southern California, even over in Arizona, began issuing multi-year permits. But it was not something that happened immediately. It was something that took some changes in the personnel managers there in order to create that type of foresight in order to make that kind of decision that no, let's just go ahead with a standard thing. We'll do a review for 1 year and then bing, 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 which you come back through, 5 years later and we'll see what's changed and what we have to change.
Right.
So,
And
for the clubs,
go ahead.
For the clubs, this really helped them out, really gave them a lot of stability on their ability to plan for and manage and conduct the events.
Correct. And we have the same thing down in Farmington, down in Chokecherry Canyon, the Glade area for Brown Springs for our rock crawls. And they gave us a 5-year permit. I had the same thing with VORA, the Valley Off-Road Racing Association up there in northern Nevada, through the Carson City office. And then I did the same thing with Moonrocks. So I was given one event a year for 5 years. After I'd paid for the NEPA study, I paid for the ARC, all the different studies that had to be done. And back then, I'm talking the early 2000s, it was like $15,000 or $20,000. But I looked at it as a 5-year investment in using that area.
Right.
Well, I used it the first year. I let ARCA use it the second year. That was Ranch Pratt, who you know. And then BLM came in and took the permit away. And they said, well, you guys you haven't had enough volunteers to control parking. And I'm like, okay, how do we tell the locals that are coming to this event that we have to control parking? You're only allowed to park here when the whole state is an open area. And they can park anywhere they want any other day. And they look at my volunteers and say, screw you, I'm going to park over here because I'm allowed to park here on Monday. I'm allowed to park here on Thursday. Why can't I park there Friday, Saturday, and Sunday? And they rightfully so. So I came back to BLM and I said, well, then you guys need to have your Leos that are on site that you require us to enforce that, because as private citizens, we can't enforce that if if it's all the rest of the year, it's wide open. Yep. And they wouldn't do that, and they pulled the permit. And of course, there was no refunds. So I talked about suing them. I just made that threat. I said, well, this is perfect grounds for a lawsuit. I've put all this money and the investment into it, and then you guys just come up with an arbitrary reason that we can't continue this after you've already collected the money and done the studies and whatever, and paying that cost recovery and all that stuff. And so, because I couldn't, it wasn't me hiring the people to do the studies. BLM was doing them, but I just had to pay for it.
Right.
So then they came after me on the desert racing side on VORA and found a reason. I mean, they worked hard to find a reason to pull my 5-year permits. And what it was is that there was a bundle of like 12 stakes, wooden stakes that have arrows attached for our racers to know where to go. And we had this kid that went out on his UTV. He was, he was special needs. I told him just go up the first 2 miles up to the beginning of the canyon in the Yerington area and then come back. Well, he kept riding. And what he would do is he'd get, a bundle of stakes that he could manage. And then once he couldn't manage them, he would just set them down on the side of the road, on the side of the race course. Well, that was fine. we went and found him, when he didn't come back when he was supposed to. And we found him a few hours later, and he was out there, and, he was disorientated, didn't know where he was at, of course. And so we picked up the stakes along the way, and we got it all cleaned up. Well, unbeknownst to us, he had gone partway down a paved road from a road crossing and dropped off a bundle of stakes, 12 of them with arrows, in the bar ditch. Well, I never drove the paved road because I'm on the racetrack. I'm cleaning up stuff that, from years before, rims and tires and stuff that's not even race related, but that I know that needs to be cleaned up. Well, they saw somebody called it in, or the recreational planner, she had seen the photos, or she'd taken photos of these 12 wood stakes, and then sat on it for 30 days, and then charged me with littering, pulled my permit, and at that point it was like $1,000 deposit that we had on the 5-year permit, and they took that as a penalty, and then got rid of my permits, and I had to do a permit for every single race, 5 races a year. Needless to say, I was a little upset.
Oh yeah, I remember some of that arguments and discussions, and that was a point in time, if I remember right. Though the BLM had some new people came in especially in Nevada, that were pretty much anti-OHV and trying to shut down the Barstow to Vegas race, or not the Barstow, the Reno to Vegas.
Yep. And they were also trying to close Sand Mountain.
Yeah.
And, everything else. I mean, yeah. I think that the standard BLM uniform out of the Carson City ended up changing to flower print or tie-dye.
Yeah.
So what else is going on? What's the hot topics right now?
Well, the hot topics right now are, Utah is the biggest thing right now. And like we talked about earlier, education, trying to get out a educational message of, how your actions, unbeknownst to you, may impact negatively how recreation is perceived. But a lot of it is back into a kind of a travel management type concept of trying to figure out, yes, these are existing roads. Yes, they've been here and they should continue. Well, no, they don't have 30 or 40 vehicles a day going through them, but yeah, they require a high maintenance vehicle or high clearance in there, but they still are important asset for people. And, this is the standard kind of thing that's still ongoing, and getting people to believe or understand that they can be part of the solution is if they're part of an organized group that is active in maintaining the lands and in relationships with their land managers. And we're seeing a lot of success with clubs out of Pacific Northwest and a lot in California. There's a growing point where people are being more and more involved with, keeping their forest routes and their favorite routes open. So we're seeing a lot of positive things, but it's a slow but sure deal. The COVID issues of the lockdowns the past couple of years have really screwed up everything and changed the dynamics and the type of discussion. The ongoing inflation issues with the high cost of fuel is, starting to impact people. And, it's a matter of trying to gear up and say, all right, let's not lose any ground. Let's try and at least maintain the ground. Let's defend the ground that we have and start looking towards the future. We know that any changes in the future are going to have to be congressionally or legislatively managed changes. And it's a matter of making sure we get recreation-friendly representatives elected to Congress and the Senate to support us.
Right. And one of the things that I want to tell our listeners is that all you guys on the East Coast or the Midwest that do not have, you don't even know what Bureau of Land Management is. Okay, when we're talking about BLM, we're not talking about what's in the news right now as BLM, but we're talking about the Bureau of Land Management. It's a government agency, and it's they're not open for the most part to motorized recreation of any kind.
Yeah.
So even though you don't live in an area that has that land, it's extremely important to all of us. If you ever want to come out and wheel Moab, wheel Sand Hollow, wheel Johnson Valley, come up to the Rubicon, come to all these places that you hear about or see about in the magazines that are in the West. If you ever want to plan a vacation someday, you need to help these organizations out. And
Right.
An organization like Blue Ribbon Coalition that steps outside of a state boundary, Corva, the Cal 4-wheel drive, some of these state agencies, they don't really do a lot outside of the state because that's where their concentration is.
Yeah.
But if you ever want to go to visit Pismo and drive on the beach and there, Texas, we get to drive on the beaches, but there you can't drive on the sand dunes. Well, if you ever want to drive on the sand dunes along the beach, Pismo's a great place to do that, but we're losing it. And without the financial aid to help fight that, it's nearly impossible. So all of our Eastern listeners, talk to your clubs, talk to your locals. I mean, there's Jeep clubs in Texas that are thousands strong, and all they do is go to one or two local parks. And look beyond that. Look what's happening nationwide, and understand that if you ever want a vacation with your Jeep, and you want to come west and see the stuff that's that has been around forever, and still be able to drive it, we need your help.
Yeah, and one big thing in the East Coast of here side, the eastern side of the states that we're finding is State Senator Mark Meadows up in West Virginia has pulled together a good coalition. So that West Virginia is now developing a four-wheel drive, a system of four-wheel drive trails, with county and state lands support. And a lot of some of this branches off the Hatfield-McCoy Trail system and some other points with linkages. So there's even some east-west trail systems building through West Virginia and into Kentucky and that, where you've got this overlanding opportunity coming up where you can go almost from coast to coast on a dirt road. So,
but we need everybody to understand it doesn't come. Freedom does not come cheaply or free.
Yes.
We always say that in America. Those that have preceded us and fought our wars are what keep us free. Well, we still need that. The war is just a little different.
Yeah, it's we need your involvement, your support, whether it be financial support, moral support. God, it's so important to look and understand how your actions will affect everything. And if you ever dream about something, then help us by keeping that dream alive, by keeping these lands open.
Right. So look to your state, look to national organizations like Blue Ribbon Coalition, and help. And by help, that's financially. Just a few dollars here or there, a tank of gas, or even a partial tank of gas, a loaf of bread, whatever you can donate. It does go to a good cause. It goes to keeping our lands, public lands, open to the public.
Yes, that's true, and that's the message, and what we're trying to get out and get everybody to thinking about. There's no one right answer, and the only wrong answer is to do nothing.
Right, and I hope that everybody listens to that and takes it to heart. And John, I want to say thank you so much for agreeing to come on and talk to us about your history and also land use. And again, thank you. And thank you for being a friend for so long.
Well, it's been nice knowing you over the years, and I hope to get back out west here soon for some more, a little bit more time out in the deserts. I'm getting a little bit mildewed up here in Tennessee.
I understand. All right, John, thank you so much for spending the time, and
Okay, you're
you
welcome,
have a good
Rich.
one. Okay.
You too. You have a good red one.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.